Welcome everyone to today's event. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. We have our audience filing in from the waiting room. I will go ahead and begin. So my name is Anna Hunt. I am the Director of Marketing, Sustainability, and Communications for the Americas at UPM Adhesive Materials, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, Unpacking EPR, How Label Converters Can Prepare for What's Next. We appreciate you taking time today to spend this next hour with us, and also just for the audience, so you know, we are being recorded, so that way we can share the recording after the event. Before we get into the content of the webinar, I wanted to start and touch a little bit on UPM's commitment to sustainability. Most of you are likely familiar with the size of our company and our long history in PSL, as well as the global footprint that we have when it comes to pressure-sensitive label materials. What I'd like to highlight today is our continued commitment to be your leading partner in sustainability. So in addition to our very ambitious science-based targets, we are ranked platinum by EcoVadis. We are on the CDP A list, and then we're also ranked top 10% by S&P Global Corporate Sustainability Assessment. And what all of this means really is these external validations really substantiate our commitment to enable the transition towards more sustainable materials, including label materials, as well as other materials in the industry where UPM does business. And then other ways that we focus on delivering sustainability to our value chain is through collaborations and knowledge exchange, just like this webinar. And thanks to the experts that are our speakers today, Jessica Rocha and Will Martin, we can have these events that exchange knowledge. So let me go ahead and welcome our speakers, Jessica and Will. How about I pass it to you for a little introduction? Jessica, why don't you start?
Thanks. Thank you, Anna. Thanks for the introduction. And hello, everybody. I'm Jessica Rocha. I'm the Sustainability Manager for the Americas for UPM. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm relatively new to UPM. I've been here for about 7 months, but I've been working in the packaging value chain for several years now. And before that, I also have worked in responsible sourcing. So kind of the other side of the coin of what we're doing today, which is really getting that customer feedback and customer engagement. So very nice to be here. Thanks.
Thank you, Jessica. And my name is Will Martin, and definitely want to welcome you. We're sitting in beautiful Asheville, North Carolina, springtime. So it's definitely a privilege to be here with you today. I've actually been around UPM also for about 6 months. Actually, it goes back a little further than that. I was with the company for roughly 17 years, got my real start in operations. So spent a lot of time making the films that we sell and that you guys run on press today. So really the focus I have today as a product manager are those polypropylene products, the clear white metallized with a variety of different adhesives. So happy to be managing that. I did have a short stint in outside sales. So if some of you recognize me, I was calling on accounts in the Southeast, Carolinas, and Georgia, and Tennessee, Virginia, and then disappeared for a while, and now I'm back. So if this is a surprise to you, well, hopefully it's a good surprise.
Well, Will, thank you so much, Jessica. Really, really great to have you both here. Before we get into the content, let's just do one more practicality for everyone in the audience. Please engage with us, send us your questions. So as you can see, we're using the Teams platform, and in the Teams platform, you'll see this Q&A icon. If you're on a PC or a tablet, it will be kind of in the top bar. If you're on a phone, you may find an ellipses or another place where you will find the Q&A icon. Once you click on that, you will go to the Q&A section. And that's where you enter in your questions. You can upvote questions, and then I will butt into the conversation as Will and Jessica are presenting to send or include your questions in that conversation. So again, please please engage with us as much as you would like. And I guess we're almost ready to start. I think we're going to begin with a poll. So yeah, let's just get a little bit of a gauge of how familiar are you with packaging EPR. So I will launch the poll. You should see it pop up on your screen. Please go ahead and make a choice, the closest choice that's relevant to you, and then we will also have the results pop up after you submit your choice. And then as those come in, I see we've got more than half of the audience now that's live with us today that has answered. So again, if you don't see that poll popping up, you can go into the chat. You might see it there. And thank you for those that have responded. Jessica, looks like we've got maybe a tiny bit of a newbies here, but then most people are just starting to learn or know the basics. So setting the stage for you.
Yeah, great. That's really good information. Thanks everybody for participating. I think that's where a lot of us are in this space, is this kind of range of just getting to understand things and wanting to know more. So very, very happy that you're here with us today. I'm going to start us off, this is our agenda, but just to give you a little bit of background, we created, because we were also in this boat, right, where we wanted to understand more about EPR, and we found that a lot of the information that we could find online spoke to brands, but didn't necessarily speak to us as suppliers. So we set up a cross-functional team to better understand what was happening with these laws and how they would affect us and our industry and you. So that's what we started with. And so today we wanted to share some of our learnings, and we are going to start with a kind of a high-level view of what is happening with packaging in general, and what's driving these regulations, and then just an understanding of where and when the EPR, packaging EPR, is happening, and then some of our big takeaways that are relevant for us in our industry, and then wrapping up with just a little bit of what's next. So.
Yeah, and just to comment on kind of scope, we'll pretty much focus on the United States. Certainly, we'll mention Canada, we'll mention some other countries south of the border, and certainly Europe. Obviously, we're a global company, and we have a lot of interactions going on. So we'll share some of that.
Great. Yes, and please type in your questions in the Q&A.
Sure.
We really want to hear from you and make this as engaging as is humanly possible when we're not actually face to face. So let's set the scene. We all, I think, know, because we are in this industry, we understand that there is a volume problem. There is a lot of packaging. Packaging is growing. According to the most recent national study that I could find by the EPA, which was actually 2018 data, we're talking about 82 million tons of packaging that's been put on the market. And for fun, that's about almost 33,000 Olympic swimming pool size of packaging, which it turns out really doesn't tell me very much. But then I asked Copilot, well, tell me more about Olympic-sized pools. And I learned that amount is about 10,000 miles of pool. So we could swim across the country and back again. And that's how much packaging we're putting on the market a year.
Yeah, and certainly, having an engineering background, I want to jump to solving the problem and thinking about design, but there's a big strategic portion to this EPR regulation and the problem as a whole, and that's just collection. You can see the note, California still landfills over 50% of their packaging waste, so that's just not all waste, it's just purely packaging. So the problem remains. Certainly, there are countries in Europe that, certainly have higher density city centers closer together. It makes collection a little easier, even in the state of California, large cities, but certainly quite a large landmass, and that's true throughout the United States.
That's right. And, kind of Will probably should be talking about this instead of me, because he's the engineer, but then we're talking about the recyclability problem, and that's really where we step in, right? designing packaging in order for it to be recycled. And currently, the statistic that you see up here is from the US Plastics Pact. So these are companies that are the most engaged, the brands that have the public targets around making their packaging more recyclable. And of those, the last statistics were that about 54% of their plastic packaging was considered designed for reusability, recyclability, or compostability. So making progress for sure, but still a ways to go. And this 2018 US EPA study said, this is a large problem or challenge, right? And that to kind of raise the recycling rates to a reasonable amount, about 61%, we would need almost $37 billion nationwide to fix this. So this is a large challenge.
Yeah, so let's assume we had that money. What would we do with it? So that's what EPR is kind of here to take on as a challenge. But certainly it's not about creating an ever expanding, recycling and collection system. Ultimately, it's about reducing just overall volume, but also reducing impact and creating, end of life scenarios where the impact is much less on our environmental systems today.
Yes, indeed. And then also, back to this collection issue. There's some places where collection works really well, and then there's a lot of places where it just doesn't. So improving access to recycling, improving community awareness around it, improving trust around it. I mean, I think maybe all of us have heard a lot of skepticism around whether something you put in the recycling bin actually gets recycled. So all of these things are part of the solutions.
Yeah, and I shared a story with you, Jessica. We live on a mountain, so we're in fairly rural portion. Our driveway is about 1.5 miles long. And it used to be we would have blue bags and we would set them at the bottom of the mountain near our mailboxes, and somebody would collect those. Then one day we were forced to move to bins. So we had waste bins, we had blue bins for recycling. And then a year later, they said, well, you can't just put bags in the bins. You need to take it out of those bags and just dump it directly into the bins. And you would think this would be a small thing, right? But yeah, the pushback from the public was significant. So this education and awareness is something that's real. So when we think of recyclability, certainly design can certainly inhibit our ability to recycle. It's interesting. We have recycling streams that we consider, successful today, like PET. You think about water bottles, probably one of the most successful in terms of actually turning something from one package back into itself. But we see even in that recycling stream today, just significant challenges. The PCR domestic supply today is really taking a beating. We've seen several PET recyclers close their doors in the past 12 months. You can really just buy virgin PET today and supply the need. And then just really to add, injury to insult, there's foreign PCR content PET coming into, our landscape within the U.S. that is less expensive than our domestic supply. So supply is going down, demand is going down. We've had brands reduce their global PCR content goals and push those out into the future. So even the most, I would say successful streams that we know of are being challenged. So this money is going to be needed to set up systems that work long term. So we'll see how it goes.
Indeed. So those are that's the big picture then of what are we trying to accomplish, or what are the states that are passing these laws trying to accomplish? And that's where, if we have a kind of a list of terms and definitions over here on the left, a lot of acronyms, because don't we all love those? So EPR stands for Extended Producer Responsibility. And that is new for our industry, we're going to talk about packaging EPR, right? Because that has to do with then the packaging that's put onto the market. But EPR itself is not a new concept. It's something that has been used globally in different ways and in the United States a lot. So think about mattresses. The producers of mattresses pay a special fee to manage that type of waste. And then bottle bills and paint, all of these different things that are can be a real challenge for our traditional waste streams. We have EPR already in place for them. The difference now is that packaging EPR just affects a whole lot more people, and the companies that are responsible, they're called producers. And producers are typically the company that's putting the product onto the market with the packaging. So we're talking about a brand or an importer, and they have the responsibility here. So it's just a huge swath of people. And the way that these, if you look at this little circle here, it's not perfect to explain, but essentially the states are passing these laws, and then they are requiring a way to manage this, manage and create a recycling infrastructure. And most of them start with then deciding that there should be a producer responsibility organization, a PRO, that takes responsibility for this. And in this case, so far in the United States, not in Canada, there's many of them, but in the US, there is just one PRO that exists, and it's called the Circular Action Alliance, or CAA, because we got to have an acronym in there. And so CAA, luckily, is one so far, and this one organization is a nonprofit, and it's also brand created. So these big companies put up the money to create CAA, and they are managing then a lot of this work. So they're doing these requirements with the states. It depends on the state, where they're creating recycling needs and assessments. They're setting targets, then they're creating the action plans to meet those targets. And they are for our customers, or your customers, primarily the ones that are collecting all of that information, because these fees are based on volumes and type of material. And so your customers then are putting all of this into the PRO kind of platform, and then they're getting a bill. And then that bill is used to create this whole entire recycling infrastructure. It's a lot.
And Jessica, can you explain a little bit just the relationship between the state and the PRO? Who creates the baseline and the fee structure? Is it one or the other, or?
Yeah, I mean, so far what we've seen is that it can really depend. You know, some states take a lot of control, and some are delegating the PRO to be responsible for creating the plan and the targets. Some states are setting the targets themselves. It really depends. Yeah.
And then you'd mentioned the fees. This is a large income for a state. And you commented on what some of this goes to, but can you explain a little further?
Yeah, a little bit. So, I mean, for instance, in California, their goal is to collect $500 million over the next 10 years. And that money is going to go into a whole range of activities around the community involvement, around creating depots for rural communities to be able to drop off their recycling, and then work on having responsible end markets as well. There's just such a huge range of things that they're going to have to do with that money.
Okay.
It's really interesting, but a little overwhelming, I think.
Sure.
Tell us why this matters for us, though, Will.
Yeah, so, one big takeaway from this slide is that we do have an opportunity to make an impact, you being, your supplier for your customer. Just to summarize, as it's already been stated, the producer or the brand is going to have to categorize what product they're putting into the market by material type. And it's going to be based on volume. It gets a little more complicated to that. Each state is different, but that creates a baseline of what that fee will be for them that they will be paying annually. The interesting portion really is that middle section, which introduces a whole new word for us because we like new words, eco-modulation, which, just to simplify, just means that that fee can be adjusted based on a set of different factors that uh, could determine the outcome of that waste package when it comes through the system. It could be as simple as introducing PCR content, redesigning the package, going to a reuse model. There's a lot of things that can impact that, but those two things combined is going to create that annual fee going forward for the brand or the producer.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So that's kind of the big background. So now let's look at where this is happening and when it's going to be happening. And please remember, if you have any questions, we'd love to hear from you. So right now, if we go back to our swimming pools, does anyone remember Johnny Canal from Saturday Night Live? We could basically build canals throughout the entire country and connect and go on a great swimming spree from Maine to Maryland to Minnesota, Colorado, and then the entire West Coast. So we're talking about 20% of the population. It's a pretty large number of Americans. We're talking about 98% of Canadians. And if you see in this slide, this in light green, there's 4 states that are currently also considering passing EPR, though they haven't yet. And every year this kind of changes a little bit. I'm sure they're also seeing what's coming next, and there's all sorts of other priorities that states have.
Yeah, really what this means is this is going to shape up to create a change that we have not seen before, at least within our industry. Certainly brands have voluntarily chosen to set goals, to make moves, to have less impact from an environmental standpoint. But really, if they're selling into a state, it doesn't matter what size that brand is today, they're going to have to report out that packaging volume that's going in. But what that also means is that, like states like California, as they come online and some of these infrastructures, all the things that you talked about, Jessica, if they can be proven, there are going to be states that are going to follow. And that's really going to design, really, I would say, drive choice. There's only so many packaging types a brand is going to offer for a given product, and they can't do different ones for every state, obviously. There can be regional differences, we see that, but it's going to drive them to make a choice and to make a change. It's being accomplished. You can see the comment here, 98% of Canada population impacted by EPR today at some level, which is quite incredible. And certainly Europe has been ahead of us on this curve as well.
That's right.
And then if we look at, we try to go through and summarize what are the common areas of focus for these different states. You can see there's a lot of yeses on this chart for the 7 states across the top. A lot of these areas we're very familiar with. So reduced packaging, we've been dealing with that for some time. Not necessarily a sustainable, quest or a goal per se, but maybe for just a cost out purpose. We've seen recycled content in various forms for packaging and labels for some time. Reusability is going to be an interesting one as an industry. There are going to be some reusable goals that are stated by states. And so it's going to be interesting how those systems are driven and created going forward. Things like down to the bottom, labeling, that's really about communication to the consumers about, what is recyclable, what is compostable. So we've seen some of the bills come through like truth in labeling, where they're trying to ensure that the general public is aware of, can this product truly be recycled, for instance? And just because it says it's compostable, does that mean you can, put it in the backyard and it's compostable? And then the last there, you see life cycle analysis. Some states are taking this very seriously as we talk about eco-modulation. Oregon has taken the stance that they want to see an LCA showing the difference between 2 different designs to prove whether there's a true impact and also determine what type of benefit, or reduction in fee will take place. And I've left the last 2 of, the ones that are circled here for you, Jessica, because I want you to highlight why these are kind of rising to the top as as being more important or something that we're concerned about?
Yes, I mean, thank you, Will. It's not that these are not as universal. They're quite universal, but we highlight here recyclability and compostability because there's already active targets for these to be, so that in some states, including California, 100% all packaging has to be considered recyclable or compostable to enter the market by the year 2032. So that's, the clock is ticking on this one, and we're not just talking about a nice to have or a way to reduce fees in the medium term. We're really talking about access to the market. And do you mind, Will, if I make one more comment about this one on
Sure,
toxics?
please.
Because here we see that maybe it's not universal, but I think everyone here also knows that we're talking today about packaging EPR, but there's all sorts of other regulations that we're all subject to, and there's so many regulations already around toxics and contamination. So even though they're not here, these are market access issues as well. And so just reminder too that there's a whole bunch of different types of regulations out there outside of even packaging
That's a good
EPR.
point.
So in terms of why this matters, there's not too much more to say about it, except we will probably pound it home and say it a few more times that, this whole issue around recyclability and compostability is really poised to be a market access criteria in the future.
And it is interesting because, we've already mentioned there are obvious brands that have some high sustainability goals, apart from EPR. They've already taken a lot of action, to either introduce PCR, bio-based content. And then when you have a goal on top of that, so like say you want to reduce 10% plastic packaging, if they've already taken those actions, some of these goals become very challenging for those who've already taken action. So there's quite a bit of lobbying going on still around some of these goals, around some of the legislation, as you might expect. A lot of these brands are wanting credit for the work they've already done. So yeah, just a lot of unintended consequences you might expect as you start introducing laws, legislation, and so forth.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So let's look then at the timeline. And here we have our 7 states that have active EPR, packaging EPR, and we have a timeline out to that 2032. There are some states that have even farther out targets, but let's focus on an area that's somewhat within a range that we can comprehend. And first, let's look at where there are targets already. So not all states have created targets yet because some of those are done when the producer responsibility organization gets involved and when they start to do research. But in other ones, in like California and Maine, for instance, and these there are states then that have created the targets as part of the law. So that's what we see here. And aside from the 100% packaging being recyclable or compostable, there are actual recycling or collection targets. There's also, you can see with California, one on plastic source reduction. So, for our industry on a lightweighting or a down gauging. And we see a more intermediate target that's coming right around the bend for us. So the targets are different. In Colorado, they set their targets with the pro, and they were recently published in the last 6 months or so. And those are mostly around specific substrates and then the collection and recyclability and the PCR incentives for those specific substrates. So interesting stuff. And then besides the targets, then here are these diamonds. They indicate where there's a state or a pro that's already going to be making when the plan is due or expected to be due. So in California, the plan is not yet published, but then in others you see that they have been. But we see that there's just a whole lot of more work that's coming also in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and as they get established, that's when the requirements for reporting comes in. Some of these that have, more than one reporting on a line, like California, there's some baseline data that was collected through CalRecycle. The one that's supposed to be providing that information to the pro so they can, finalize the plan, they can get voted into legislation. And it's interesting just as you stated, not all things are aligned and not all things are clear. So unfortunately, brands in California are going to have to report in before the plan is finalized, which means they'll probably have to come back and amend the information that they've already submitted. So you can see how there can be some frustration, especially in the early days of these different plans as things get laid out. And it speaks to a little bit of limitation of, Circular Action Alliance and what freedom they have to drive what's needed. They're trying to align things like timing of reporting between states. But for instance, if the law states it's by a certain date, producer has to report in, then they have to report in, even if all the information isn't there that's needed to report in, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, but those fees start to come in that second year when they start reporting the actual volumes for the previous year. And that's when they have to start paying out on an annual basis. So we're just showing, kind of those initial starting points, but it will continue year after year for each state. And, just as to complicate things even further, if you look at the 2032 goal that was mentioned by Jessica, that 100% packaging recyclability and compostability is the responsibility of the brand or the producer. But it's actually the responsibility of the pro for the plastics that's going to be recycled goal and the 25% plastic source reduction. So there's going to be quite the relationship between state, pro, and brand to try to make these goals come about and who is responsible in the end to make them happen.
Indeed. That was pretty heavy stuff. I think that to me also then the big takeaway that is around, what we've got here highlighted, this 26, 27, this is the year where the rubber hits the road, and we can expect a lot more ramping up with what our customers need. Anna, you just popped up.
Agreed.
I did pop up. It's a lot to take in, so I'm just getting prepped here for a little break and engagement with our audience in our
Sure.
next poll. Hopefully that there was some clarity there. As you can see, right, a super complex system right now, an environment for us. So we are likely getting tons of questions from our customers. We're getting tons of questions from you. I'm sure you are getting a lot of questions from your customers. So I've just launched another poll. Hopefully you're starting to see that pop up over your screen. Please share with us what EPR related topics are your customers asking about. And you can select as many as you'd like and scroll down. There's about 10 options here. So as you can see, right, Will and Jessica, I'm sure you're getting a lot of questions. Any of these that you feel kind of always seem to come up these days?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think, go ahead,
go ahead,
Will.
Jessica.
No, I want you to.
Okay. So I would say, some of the more common questions that have kind of bled over the last few years, just around APR, seems to be top of mind. We don't always know what's driving the question, but that kind of leads into the whole thing around, toxicity, product safety. Some of those are now being driven by EPR in terms of where the source of the question is coming from. So it's quite a blend of what's coming into us.
Definitely, and I think one of the main points to me too is that sometimes these questions, they are not labeled an EPR question, right? And there are things that are kind of applied to a lot of other areas, but all of these things really are related also to packaging EPR.
For those that have accomplished the survey, we can see here that recycled content options was kind of at the top there, with also APR compliance and wash-off adhesive as two other ones quite high.
Definitely. And I see it in there's a fair number of compostability, and we've seen that too. A lot of questions around compostability right now as well.
Yeah. The one big takeaway for this is just the queries and inquiries are just continue to increase, and really just, you being a supplier to your customer is just trying your best to be able to answer and support. And that's certainly where we want to partner with you to do that. Yeah, states are different. Colorado, Oregon, California, different categories. Everything is different state to state, and that's making it challenging for what to report and how to report. So even though there's just the one pro, it's still going to be quite the challenge.
Yeah, and actually, I think this is a great, Elaine, we see your question, and this is a good opportunity then to talk a little bit about the producers. Some of this is essentially we are speaking to you as suppliers, and we understand for the most part that you are suppliers also to your customers. And big picture, we understand that your customers are the ones that are going to be considered the producer. It's a funny word because I think we all are producing things. But in the packaging EPR world, the producer is the person that's using your packaging to put something else on the market. But let's talk about some of the exemptions. So not actually every single type of product needs to be within the scope. Tell us more, Will.
Right. On the product side, anything, specific to medical, whether it be device product, it could be prescription, non-prescription drugs. And it gets into even a nutritional supplement space, especially those supporting the aging. Most of those are being exempted from the states that we've reviewed. Certainly states have bottle bills that collect and have different programs, deposit and so forth for PET, for glass, for aluminum and different sorts. Those are tending to stay in place and are being exempted from the EPR regulation. Of course, they have their own set of guidelines and things that we need to follow and understand. And then anything, product safety related. Again, as recycling increases, there is the concern, are we introducing something into the recycling stream where it goes back, for instance, into a food container or package, and is that a concern long term? So certainly keeping hazards out of that stream is a part of what they're trying to exempt here.
That's right. And then on the producer side, so then the companies that are putting the product on the market, we do see these are things that really are important for the producer to fully understand, but we do see that there are either exemptions or reduced reporting requirements for smaller producers, so companies that are putting not very much product onto the market in a given state. We also see that there might be exemptions for nonprofits or government agencies, agricultural producers, educational institutions. So each state is kind of handling it a little bit different, but the kind of the bigger companies, we expect that they are also they are required and they're not exempt.
Yeah. And I like the note you had added this to this slide, Jessica, just a reminder, secondary and tertiary packaging that's going into your customer, from yourself, or it could be even from your supplier like UPM. At least as of today, it's not fully exempt in every state. California would be an example. As mentioned, not everything is finalized. And we've worked with a couple third parties talking through a lot of these regulations, and they were quick to point out, until it's written into law stating that it's exempt, then it's not exempt. So that's something we're just going to have to monitor going forward.
That's right. And so that's kind of more not as your supplier so much, but then as a business that we also need to take an analysis and understand, well, where is it that we are considered a producer and need to also report on the type of packaging that we're delivering.
So maybe I just jump in really quick just for clarity, because I've kind of going back to Elaine's question, right? I think this is where things start getting even more complex, right? So a lot of times we talk about producer and we're thinking these CPG brands, right, that are making the packaging that are using the packaging that their product goes into the market for consumer to use. But then us also as suppliers, there are likely these packaging EPR laws that will treat us as a producer because we use packaging, right? We package our products when they are sent to the final user. So I think to Elaine's questions, right, it really depends on the law if we're responsible for reporting on the packaging that we use. Is that the correct way to look at it?
I think so. I think that you're absolutely right. And that's something that we all need to just have an eye on, and get legal counsel involved in understanding.
Yeah.
Thanks, Anna. Yeah. And so our main takeaway here is that while the producers are ultimately the ones that are responsible for their responsibility, their packaging EPR, we can also help if we understand a little bit about what are these exemptions, then that is part of what can help focus the customer on where they can have the biggest impact and where we can help them most then in reducing these fees. And I guess we also should mention then that so far when we've read the laws, we have not seen that release liner is mentioned. So they are not considered right now. They're considered a byproduct. They're not considered a part of packaging. So we don't see that release liner is so far part of it.
Exactly.
So that's kind of our big overview, and now we wanted to share some of the main takeaways from our work that we did. And the first one maybe
Jessica,
is
I'm gonna jump in because I
yeah.
want to stay true to my claim that I will butt in because there is a question in the Q&A. Are there correlations between the exempted products and the percentage those products represent in landfills?
Oh boy. I wish that I do not know the answer to those questions, except some of those products, right? Paints, some of those things should not be sent to a landfill either. They're going to be diverted as well. So things that might be hazardous might have a separate waste stream. But that's a really interesting question.
Right.
Yeah, and we see a really interesting comment too that how to recycle considers the release liner on label sheets to be packaging. So I think that kind of points to our main takeaway number one, which is this is a very dynamic situation.
Yep.
I don't think that this is the end, right? And we don't know exactly what will end up being, and we'll talk about it later, but I think liner recycling is something we're going to continue to need to work on regardless, right? But we are in our early stages here. We're all learning. Are they building the bicycle while we're riding it? Is that what we're doing? Because they're setting the targets. The CAA is trying to figure everything out, but it's not all figured out. So we're all in this together. And secondly, to the label liner point, right? So we do really think that it's important to continue to work on liner end of life solutions. While we think it's out of scope right now, it doesn't mean that it won't always be. This is a very dynamic situation, and there's other reasons to work on it, right? There's other environmental reasons. Some of our customers or end users have other targets that they want to hit, zero waste to landfill targets. So this is still a very salient issue.
Yeah, and we've said it multiple times, but producers are going to need help, especially from the reporting standpoint. As mentioned, categories are different from state to state. I think you had listed out California has 95 categories.
That's
Oregon
right.
has 65, I think, and Colorado 61. So I would say Colorado and Oregon are close, but certainly there's quite the difference from state to state. So that means Pro can't just have one, level of entry, I would say, in terms of how information is input. It has to be specific by state. So it's a challenge, and we're here to try to help meet that.
That's right. And one thing that we should point out, though, that Pro is really trying to harmonize things and map the different categories so that they do correlate. And so far, all of their guidance for every state indicates that a pressure sensitive label should be considered a non-detachable component. So it's a part of a main piece of packaging. And that means that they should not be categorized separately, but they should be considered a part of that main packaging and weighed as part of that same packaging. And what in California, when they're categorizing, they're looking at, well, what has a plastic component with a non-plastic main piece of packaging. And it's important to know with PSL too that adhesive, regardless of whether it's paper or plastic, does make it a plastic component. That's how we are approaching it.
And just to mention, go out to the Circular Action Alliance website. You can pull the plans up. It's very intuitive and easy to navigate. You can see some of these categories and fee structures that are set and see how they are labeled today. I think California, there's a draft out that you can look at as well. But it's very interesting how the states are approaching from not only the categories and from the fees, but the malices and bonuses that take place as well.
And you see me pop up, so I
Sure.
also have one more comment here because I know that our customers have been asking or even have been asked about the weights of of the labels that they're supplying. And Will, maybe in our technical information sheets, do we provide some information there that would help extrapolate the weight of the material itself, maybe without the varnishes or inks or whatnot, but the weight of the material that is being used?
Yeah, I think there are means, just kind of back up a little bit, for a brand to do the necessary work to report in the weight and volume of a given package. Typically, the recommendations we're giving is that it really needs to be the finished product that's really weighed and analyzed. Uh, we can you can get the information out of our technical information sheet, from a face weight, a total composition weight, liner weight, and so forth. So you can definitely get the information if needed. But once inks, laminates, over varnishes, those type things are added, then it becomes a kind of an exercise of really diving in and understanding what that final weight is. So
Yeah.
it's not quite as easy as just adding up all the components, though I think there's some of that's going to go on based on what has to be reported in to the pro.
Yeah, and the CAA does have guidance on how to do this, and we issued
True.
also a guidance for our customers that
Right.
that your sales reps can pass along with you on how to do this kind of calculate, or how to support your
Sure.
customers as they're doing the calculation. Great point. So tell us about this one, Will.
Yeah. So my takeaway from this is, in some regards, I think there's going to be quite an awakening within the market and within brands. If this becomes a market access criteria issue for recyclability and compostability, there's going to be some significant changes that need to take place. If they're going to be avoiding fees, they're going to be thinking about the design of their packaging, and they're going to be requiring, really validation to any type of design changes that happen. So it could be references to APR critical guidance. It could be to, PCR content, what is the source and how was that verified, for instance, and that's true for bio-based as well. So really an awakening that's coming. We'll see how fast it comes. 2032 is still a little ways away, so they'll hold off as much as they can, though they are going to be required to present some plans to the state ahead of time. So we should start hearing more and more about this.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see, once all the fee structures are set, are they really going
Yeah,
to drive that change? And I think
that's
what
it.
you said really leads into our last one too, right?
Yeah, you know, don't want to waste a crisis, right? So it's a real opportunity, I think, for you and your customer to work together, and then us to come back behind you and to support. Again, a lot of these changes that can be made for design, for eco-modulations from a positive aspect, we're familiar with today. Could be the light weighting, could be, just enabling recycling for plastics. Certainly, we're referencing APR. But there's others that we've been doing. It's really, the challenge is going to be when we start talking about redesign. And so it'll be interesting to see if we can help them do that and how soon we get in on the conversation with the brands if they're having to do that redesign.
Excellent, thank you. So now we're going to just wrap up a little bit and provide a little information about what's next. But let's we're going to just quickly summarize what we've learned and what the big takeaways are. So, the point here is packaging EPR is here. It's ramping up. 26 is a banner year. You see the dollar signs with the green. 5 states are going to start collecting fees this year. So we are really expecting that this will be an indirect effect for our business. primarily, right? This is going back to what is the definition of a producer, but we are expecting that this will be among all the other things that are happening and adding complexity to our industry and the world right now, that this will be one of them. And our 5 takeaways are boiling down to the collaboration, which I think is where UPM, what we really strive to be, and what one of our kind of most areas of pride for us as an organization. We obviously can't do it alone. Our customers can't do it alone. Your customers can't do it alone. The states. What we've learned is this: nobody can do it alone. The states need the pros. So we're all in an ecosystem together. So, again, like our takeaway number 1, just follow some of these EPR developments, and we will support you in that. We will provide some updates, and continue then to look into your own operations, what is the scope for secondary and tertiary packaging, and how does it affect the company that you work for.
Yeah, and 3, just to continue to help support your customer in terms of the information and data that's needed for reporting. 4, I would argue that at least the work I've done, with customers like yourselves, you tend to know the packaging better than the brand themselves in terms of what makes sense from a recyclability standpoint, and just overall design. So yeah, it's an opportunity to start evaluating, because the products that work today, but you're also aware of products they sell into the market that, the packaging design does not meet any of this criteria, or there's just a big opportunity to make a big change and get out of some of these heavy fee materials that they're going to be paying out on. So just encourage you to just take advantage of the time to do that. And then just be a front runner and start the conversation. Let them know that you're aware of EPR and what's happening, and that you're there to support them. Certainly when the time comes, they're going to be reaching back out to you, and certainly let us be there to help support that as well.
Thanks, Will. Yeah, and I mean, UPM, we are striving to be your partner. That, again, like I said, that it's extremely important to us as an organization, and we encourage you then to reach out to your main contact person, or Will and I, but your main contact person. Yep. As the sales rep.
Yep,
yeah.
Exactly. We always like to point to the sales rep, whether they like it or not. But that's what activates all of us behind the scenes and then hopefully try to figure out the best way to support you. We know everybody's needs are quite individual and different and unique, so we want to try to meet that where you are. And then we've mentioned APR. Certainly when we talk about packaging, plastics is top of mind for most of these states. Trying to deal with single-use plastics is one of the biggest targets that states have. Just learning APR and the design guide, if you haven't taken a look at it or you're not familiar with it, again, it's also very intuitive, and you can at least know where to go to if you have a question, and you can get into the details. They break it down by component. So they talk about labels, they'll talk about size of the container, and they'll talk about inks and other things that would impact the recyclability of that product, and what's considered a good solution and then what would be considered detrimental.
Right, yes. And, we didn't talk about it very much, but we do offer, UPM has a label life tool. It's a life cycle assessment tool, and we calculate the environmental climate impacts of our products, and we provide that information to you along with almost every single quote. It is attached to almost every single quote that you get. We also offer a comparison tool, so you can look at what would happen if you did change from one material to another, or one product to another, and what would that environmental impact be. And this can be really useful right now, for especially in Oregon, if you've got customers that are trying to reduce those fees in Oregon. And then also the product safety and compliance. This is of course, an incredibly important topic, both for packaging EPR and just generally. So this doesn't go away, and it's something that we are very much working on always, and quite responsive about.
Yeah, and the final part, I would consider the fun part. And I know I've worked with a lot of you, and it's fun to see you get excited about having an impact Certainly when it comes to design of packaging and coming up with solutions to overcome, sometimes some significant problems. So we just look forward to helping you and supporting you and seeing how we can make some changes with this whole issue around design and the impact in terms of the environmental impact.
Thanks, Will.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Will. Thank you, Jessica. This concludes the main content of our webinar. Of course, there is still time to drop a question into the Q&A area or even the chat. There is a question right now about the label life assessment tool. Is there a cost to the label life assessment? Jessica, maybe you can share.
No, we provided in terms of the actual analysis of the impact. Those come with the sales quote, and there is no cost for those.
Yes, and I believe we're able to compare a standard product that you're using from us with an alternative
right.
if you're looking to switch, or we provide the product footprints as well.
And they're really visual, easy to read. They give some kind of comparisons that are easy to kind of understand. They're excellent.
Great, great. And before we leave today, we did put together an additional info sheet. You can actually, I think, click on this link here in your Teams view, and that should take you to the info sheet. There's also a link to our APR recyclability guide specific to our PSA label materials that you have access to that. And then one final action, please take our feedback survey. I dropped the link in the chat. It will take you literally like 10 seconds there. So we definitely really appreciate your feedback. Thank you so much to our speakers and presenters, Jessica, Will, really great information. Very much appreciate you preparing this for us and our audience. For those that have attended, taken the time, thank you so much for attending and spending this hour with us. We will now end the event and then share with you the recording and some information via an email as a follow-up. So thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Anna.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Oh, looks like we have a question.
I think that sometimes happens when people try to do a reaction because that raised hand is right next to it.
That's true.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Okay.
That's right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. Have a good one.